Good evening, and welcome to Flat Earth UK Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and tonight I am joined by Ben, aka Matrix Decode, and co-host of Flat Earth Rebel Outpost. How are you doing, Ben?
Hey, Nathan. It's good to be on your show. I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Not bad at all. On tonight's show, we are going to be looking at how we came to believe that we live on a ball. And we're going to be looking at Antarctica to a certain extent, discussing the Matrix movie, looking at the nature of reality, looking at globe programming, propaganda. We'll also look at some psychopathic subjects such as gaslighting and crazy making. And of course, we'll take a closer look at the Flat Earth Rebel Outpost channel and Matrix Decode YouTube channels. If you want to join in with us tonight, there is a chat feed that's live for all you PC and Mac users. You can type the word question if you have a question for myself or Ben. If you put it in capital letters, I'll do my damnedest to get to the questions and ask Ben when and if I see them. Unfortunately, if you are on a mobile device, you may not be able to actually interact with the chat, although you can see it running. So if we kick off the show, Ben, tell us how you found out the Earth is flat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a journey. I mean, I've been a truth seeker for about 5 years, did lots of research, and it was the end of 2014 when I started to see a few azimuthal equidistant maps in people's avatars on YouTube, and part of a community, a truth community I was involved with, and this, piqued my interest, and I was looking at NASA fakery, beginning of the year, and come across Flat Earth, maybe Eric Dubay, Matt Powerland, in sort of January time. Then Mark Sargent brought out his clues, and this is a period of like, wow, for me it wasn't like a shock to the system, because I've seen how we're being lied to, how we're being manipulated, and so it kind of all started to make sense, the bigger picture, with the Flat Earth. So this led me to investigating it every day, hours every day, watching as much information as I could on YouTube, researching Wikipedia, science, this and the other. And it's been a journey since then, and it took a while to become a fully fledged flat earther, because there was always these doubts in the back of your mind. Is it true? Can it be? And so on. But it took me a while, it took me a couple of months. And I think I released my first Flat Earth video on YouTube in March. So yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Did you have any doubts since you found out? And what you said then is that you took a long time to actually call yourself a true flat earther. Now you are. Would you say you'd ever have any sort of repercussions of doubt? Have you ever doubted it since you'd call yourself a true flat earther? Yeah,
I question it still. It's a tough one. I mean, it's such a profound change to one's existence and belief system, if you like. That there's that programming is still there. I still question things every now and again. I have to remind myself of the proofs that I think are valid for the flat Earth, and so it's an ongoing process of development.
It's a strange process in the respect that you kind of have to become a ball Earth expert in order to become a flat earther.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to study all what we've been told, indoctrinated to believe, the various alleged proofs of a globe Earth, spinning ball. You've got to study up on these things. That's a very important part of it all.
And you start off as a sort of debunker, if you like. You're looking to debunk flat Earth, or that's how a lot of people describe it. Maybe not necessarily true for everybody, but you kind of, in a way, you want it to be a ball because it's a bit of a nightmare it not being.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge, definitely a challenge. For me, it was more of a case of, wow, this is really interesting. I wasn't trying to debunk it. I was just trying to see weigh up the arguments, and you know, the flat Earth arguments, proofs, what have you, far outweighed the ball Earth arguments. So it was, I mean, the book for me, the globe spinning ball Earth model. Once you crack that first, you know, you crack the shell of it, it just falls apart. Once you start questioning gravity, Coriolis effect, how we're supposedly spinning and hurtling through the universe, and all these different things, you know.
I mean, then you've got to start looking at the proof that people fall back on. I know this for me happens a lot on Facebook, that people will present you with proof that has been debunked in the flat Earth community and is obviously fake to us. But I mean, what's your take on the sort of highest of the high authority on globe Earth proof? What's your take on NASA, without going into do-si-dos?
NASA, well, you know, NASA's the linchpin, is the key to a lot of this, and key to a lot of what people believe and why they think they're on a spinning ball. I mean, it wasn't really until NASA allegedly went into space in the 60s, when with the Apollo moon landing, that we actually got high enough to really see what we're living on. And you know, as many people who are probably watching this are aware, you know, that the moon landings were completely faked, obviously faked. And NASA has been faking everything ever since, it seems. Yeah.
It's crazy, even with the moon landing footage. When I post it on Facebook, I sort of post it with a wry smile, thinking, you know, how obvious is this going to be when I show somebody what the moon landing footage really looks like? And even stating its models, look at this, look at that, look at the other, people will still come back to you and say, no, this is because of the grainy 50s footage, 60s footage rather. You know, they'll make all the excuses under the sun. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the programming is strong. I mean, the moon landings, you know, as a conspiracy, has been around for a long time. And, you know, it was one of those, okay, yeah, it seems fake. It's, you know, I've looked at it a few times, and then flat Earth comes along. It really, you know, puts your focus on NASA and what proof is there? What are these photographs and videos? What are the claims they're making? And you start to find faults in all of it.
I mean, not just faults, the subliminal messages layered into some of them, you know, upside down sex in the clouds and, you know, all sorts of crazy faces in the clouds, not just the repetitive stuff that you can find. You know, I don't know how tuned into subliminals you are, but it's whenever I look at that stuff, it's all I can see.
Yeah, there's a lot of subliminal, subconscious programming going on with everything they do. I mean, they're releasing so many news articles lately as well. To combat what seems like combating countermeasures to the flat Earth, the growing flat Earth movement.
You mean things like the epic time lapses of Earth and the sort of transit of the moon past Earth and things like that?
Yeah, the epic fail. I mean, yeah, I mean, those videos and photographs are just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how people believe it. I mean, that's one of, you know, to me, one of the most disturbing things of all of this truth seeking is, you know, the masses and how easily fooled they are. You know, with something so terribly, you know, awful graphic design, CGI, like the epic video and of the moon passing in front of the Earth. I mean, it's just complete nonsense, and yet people believe it, and that's you know, truly amazing.
Well, the thing that gets me about the moon passing the Earth was that because of the way that it's put together in CGI, it quite literally disproves the heliocentric model in the respect that you can see that it's going in the wrong direction compared to how we view it from Earth. So they haven't got the Earth rotating, they've got the moon transiting from left to right or from west to east, whereas you have to set up a time-lapse camera and see that it doesn't go in that direction. So it's one of those, they've scrambled to put it out, but by the same token, they've literally disproved their own heliocentric theory with that particular time-lapse.
Right, perhaps, yeah. I mean, I think there's some idea that the moon spins in the opposite direction to the Earth or something like that. But yeah, for me, it was like I think it was a 5-hour time lapse video, and you know, the clouds don't morph, which is you know, is a big giveaway. And the moon itself was in darkness. You know, it wasn't illuminated like how we see it when the sun supposedly shines on it. And the sun was, you know, is directly between the Earth and the sun, the moon was. So, and then there's graphic artifacts around it, and it's just so dodgy.
It's just a terrible piece of footage. I mean, even if you were doing a graphic design of that particular thing, you know, I can picture Hollywood images in my mind that are miles more realistic than that particular piece of footage.
Yeah, yeah. I think they get the lowest of the low and the worst, you know, prison inmates to do the graphics, because, you know, most people are good people, and you have to be of you know, a suspect nature, probably criminal, to be involved in that kind of fakery. You know, so they can't get the best graphic designers or CGI guys, which, you know, possibly. Or they make it so bad that, you know, that, I mean, with this whole epic Discover satellite a million miles away, they make they say they have a 4-megapixel camera, so they produce really low quality images, so they can, you know, get away with it like that as well.
It's back to the poor quality black and white cameras that they use for the moon, and it's like, oh well, that's the only resolution that we can transmit. And you think, what? How do you transmit at all? But why use poor quality cameras, especially when they're faking the moon, faking the Earth shot through the window with one of the best cameras that money can buy? And you think, well, wouldn't you just take that with you into the lander and take it outside if you've got this really good camera?
Yeah, they you know, what are they doing with the money? I mean, they can't buy a few good, decent cameras. I mean, these days you've got 8K video, you know, super high resolution, and gigapixel cameras, and the images NASA shows us from the, you know, the ISS feed and the other images are just terrible.
Yeah, I did the same. I went to Curry's and had a look at a 50 quid camera, and it was just astonishing quality for 50 quid. And you think, what are NASA doing? How can they get away with saying that we've got to use poor quality cameras when a good quality camera costs next to nothing, and they're spending billions, you know, money hand over fist?
Yeah, yeah. It's NASA's, you know, is completely dodgy. It's just it's bizarre how we never really saw it before. You know, it wasn't until Flat Earth came along that Flat Earth has really changed everything. How we perceive the world and perceive, you know, it clues us in on that, on these kind of things.
But you've got to be part of that community, it seems. I mean, I do my damnedest to put the information out on Facebook. And even when you're telling people this information, in other words, you've diced it to death yourself, you've confirmed it as much as humanly possible, you're finally at the point, like you say, that you're a believer, you go forward to the sheep and present the information to them, and all they'll do is defend it in the same way that the programming has made them sort of want to defend it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have many options. I mean, a lot of them, you know, a few friends I talk to about other conspiracies, they don't care. They just don't care. That's the response. I don't care. It doesn't affect my life, you know. And they're completely oblivious to how they're being manipulated on such a fundamental level as to the place that they're living on.
Yeah, I mean, people like Facebook, people like TV, people like their internet content. As much as we are internet content, you know, people can tune into whatever they want to on the internet. They're going to type whatever they want to search for, and people assume that that means that they're in control of what they're looking at, and nothing could be further from the truth. Obviously with TV, they've got control of exactly what you see, but on the internet, you know, people can be steered, especially when they're addicted to Facebook. Facebook programs people the same way TV does. In fact, it does a much better job, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's about the herd mentality, you know, the conformity, the group, you know, the manipulation of the masses. Send out a meme here, put this out, and it gets spread like wildfire. People jump on the bandwagon. It's like there's people changing their Facebook profile pictures to the French flag recently. You know, to me, that's just some big experiment going on.
Couldn't agree more. My wife did it and I saw it and I was like, oh God, totally suckered in. My wife is addicted to Facebook, so I get to sort of watch the sheeple mentality, as much as I'm not putting my wife down in any way, shape or form, because she does give me quite a lot of information from Facebook. But by the same token, I can sort of watch her glued to it and think, my God, you know, you are quite literally being programmed on this 3.5-inch screen, like 4 hours of the day. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's clever how they do it. I mean, very clever.
I mean, one of the things you said when we started was that your first sort of introduction to the flat Earth was the azimuthal equidistant map.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, how long did it take for the whole Antarctica thing to sink in?
I'm not sure really. I mean, for me, it was more about the proofs, trying to find out about lack of curvature and this kind of thing, Bedford level experiment, which I did my own version of, made a video. Antarctica, it's a mind blower. Again, it's not only is the Earth flat, but Antarctica, what is that all about? Is there an edge? Is there a dome? Is there an infinite plane? What is out there? Why are they hiding it? Why can't we go there? All of this really lends to they're definitely hiding something. The fact that it's off limits to corporations and what have you, and just regular people. It's a massive place for resources. It's just why do they have this UN? It's a treaty, Antarctica Treaty. Yeah, it's a big question mark, isn't it? It's another piece to the puzzle. It's just another one of these really absurd things that we've overlooked all this time. And
it's wrapped up in so many layers. I mean, just recently I've been getting commenters saying I'm getting hammered over this Antarctic Race thing. I mean, I don't know how much information you've got on it, probably as much as me, which is next to none. But you kind of, every day you're finding new answers, but at the same time, you're uncovering two things. One is more deception and more lies to hide the truth. And the other is more layers of programming like this race thing. Somebody will pick it apart eventually. But in the meantime, it's just another obstacle, another deception to overcome.
Yeah, they seem to have these events, these big sort of like the Antarctic Race, just to reinforce the narrative over and over again. I mean, there's something's definitely not right about them being able to circumnavigate Antarctica. I'm not too sure on the specifics of the path they take, but I'm sure there are big gaping holes in what they're saying, and what's really happening there.
Well, we're not going to get to cross it ourselves. I mean, this is the biggest problem. If it's all locked down, as it stands, there's no real way of us going and finding answers to these questions. And by the way it sounds, they're put into sections and told limited pieces of information. The people who are actually on Antarctica are given set routes and set paths, so they're not allowed to deviate from those. So the truth is even hidden from the people who are down there. So the chances of us getting to the bottom of it are very, very slim.
Yeah, at this point in time, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, hopefully we'll make it out there and see what's out there at some point. I mean, if enough people are brave enough to have the funds to do so. Different things are happening. A lot's happening quite fast in terms of discovery and people doing different things. Whether it's making videos or what have you, bringing new ideas, new concepts to the table. To think outside of the box. And hopefully we can get there. I think it kind of is that's going to be is a big part of the battle. I think is discovering what is out down there. The truth's got to come out about that.
I mean, we can only hope that people like Matt Powell succeed and manage to get down there. And in the meantime, all people like you and I can do is raise awareness. I mean, if, as it stands, people think Antarctica's a continent on the bottom of a planet, and the more we can wake people up to that being false, that's going to get us closer to the sort of ant mentality. The more ants you have, the bigger the ball, or whatever the Disney example would be. But the more little ants you've got knowing the information, the more likely you are to actually succeed in getting down there. And eventually, if the information spills over to somebody who's got a yacht and enough money to just literally go down there and appeal all of the laws that stand in their way and get their way past the gunship, stopping them from actually making it there, we might find some answers. But that's a lot of hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, I think there's different ways of attacking, dealing with this, trying to find out what's really going on down there. I mean, we've got doing something for Rebel Outpost episode 4. So I think there's a lot, contacting people, trying to pick holes in what they say and use as evidence, perhaps. I think there's a lot can be done, but it is. I mean, the flat Earth subject really is about us as individuals and as a whole, humanity. but you know, not everyone's going to get it, you know. So I think it's more of a personal journey, and if other people wake up to it, that's great. You know, the more of us, the merrier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personal journeys is the truest word you could say, because you can't, I don't want to get into matrix comparisons this early on, but you can't really show somebody the fact that it's flat. You can't really tell somebody the proof. They kind of have to discover it for themselves. They have to do their own research, and no amount of spoon feeding them, unless you've got a really wonderful, well worked out propaganda machine like the powers that should not be have, you've got no chance. Your only route is to try and unpick the programming little bit at a time, and even then they've still got to go on that personal journey. They've still got to actually see it with their own eyes before they'll believe it. So it's a deep level of programming that people have to go through. I mean, that leads us quite nicely on to the next question I was going to ask you, which is sort of, what are your views on the sort of propaganda, the media manipulation? I know you've got a Star Trek sort of compilation edited video on your channel on Matrix Decode.
Yeah, that's my first flat Earth video. It was kind of like a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit like yeah, it's been going on for a long time, hasn't it? The programming of the ball Earth in movies and films, in media of all types. It's just constantly being reinforced, and you can see how they've done it and how they've gone away with it, and how they push different narratives like aliens and different universe, you know. Going into space, traveling in space. There's so much of like science fiction, which I'm a big fan of. You know, I really enjoy Star Trek, Star Wars. You know, the Matrix. You know, these kind of edgy films, and there's a lot of truth in them. And then you know, and then there's a lot of, especially like Star Trek. It's yeah, there's a lot of programming in dream fulfillment. And for its time, I mean, the Star Trek series, the original series, it finished just a couple of weeks before the Apollo moon landing in 1969, Apollo 11. So that was like kind of led up to the moon landing. It was, for me, it's an example of how they, you know, get people into that frame of mind. There's lots of stuff like that. You know, so much of science fiction, and I love it. I love it, but now we see it differently. You know, can't quite watch Star Wars the same point of view, you know, or Star Trek and any of these things. But yeah, I just take it now. It's just fiction. It really is just science fiction. That's what we've been dealing with all this time.
Well, just the term science fiction. Again, I talk a lot about words and their meanings, but science fiction creates an image of it being scientific and fiction. And in some ways, when you said, well, there's a lot of truth and there's a lot of programming in there, you're so right. It's probably equal measures of both. You know, they're gonna. I say that, then you think about it in the context of the whole thing set in space, and you go, well, actually, no, kind of the whole thing is a lie. You know, where does it begin and where does it end? I think it's. I always get his name wrong. It's either Rob or Bob. But is it Rob Skeever?
Rob Skeever.
It's Rob Skeever did a little piece on wicked lies. You may or may not have caught it, but he boiled down how good liars work. RSE also did a video on this and explained how the occultists, when they're trying to convince, this was RSE, he was saying that the occultists or the Satan worshippers were posing as Christians, and in the little handbook they gave, it explained how to mix equal measures of lies and truth, because they're the most effective way of lying. And it's the same with sort of programming in TV, movies, and the internet. You will always get, and the trolls do it too. That's how you spot the trolls. When they mix in equal measures of lies and truth in their remarks and comments, you can tell that you know they're part of that structure, or at least that's how I think I can spot them. You know, a normal rational person will have a rational conversation. A troll will just mix in truth and lies and then divert you away from the truth bit and bring you back onto the lie bit and sort of play this magic dance with you.
Yeah, the trolls. Yeah, there's definitely an army of flat Earth trolls out there. You know, it's obviously paid to troll almost every flat Earth video. The same names, same people. You know, that's definitely one thing that's going on. I mean, I've experienced that on some of my videos. big list of trolls up banned now. And so you see the same names everywhere. And, you know, if you was a normal person and you thought Flat Earth was crazy, then you wouldn't bother. You know, you wouldn't waste your time, not again and again at least. You might make one comment. But yeah.
I mean, we chatted about this a little bit before the show when we were saying my view on this is they are just normal people at the end of the day, and sometimes bearing that in mind, I think at least rattle them to a certain extent, because they're not robots. They are real people typing on a keyboard. They may or may not be paid. There's no real way of proving it, although I know sometimes I'm sure I saw Sheridan catch out or say he caught out one of these sort of shills, literal shills, that was trying to waste his time. But on the whole, most of the commenters, you can't tell. And in some cases, there will be just regular folk like you and I that are just globeheads that just want to fight it. But the trolls, the ones that I think are paid shills because they do it 24/7, they mix in what you call wicked lies, you know, these equal measures of lies. I mean, that brings us back onto sort of your views on the programming that sort of takes place in Star Trek. And I want to get to this one in more detail, but certainly the Matrix movie has got, to me, more layers than maybe meets the eye. What's your take on the Matrix and Star Trek and the sort of programming that they put in there? I mean, if you want to focus on the globe, it's up to you, but...
Yeah, we can talk about the Matrix. I mean, I named my channel, you know, after the Matrix, you know, Matrix Decode. It's because I'm, you know, trying to decode the Matrix and what I think the Matrix really represents. And that movie, for me, and I imagine for so many others, you know, who are seeking the truth, it has such a profound meaning, different layers, and you know, you keep going back to it and you discover more and more. You know, I mean, for me, the Matrix represents the system of control that we are sort of subjected to, and the manipulation of people's minds and their reality, and you know, that in terms of the flat Earth is where we are. You know, people, we call them globe heads. We were globe heads, and you know, you're living in a false reality there. Your existence, the universe, and so on. So for me, the Matrix movie is more of a metaphor for our existence and how we can be manipulated. Not necessarily, I don't think we're necessarily living in a simulation, but I don't rule that out either. I think we're living in some kind of world created by a creator. How it works, that's still a mystery, you know? But it appears to be flat.
That I'll definitely agree with. It certainly appears to be flat. My concern with the movie The Matrix, and I know we've discussed this at length last time we chatted, was that there may be another level of programming that puts control back into the hands of the elite. And you said it when you said living in a simulation, and that's the bit that kind of worries me. A lot of people will use simulation theory as a go-to, and it's an old idea. Now, I don't want to give off the impression that I'm closed-minded to any of the ideas, but my concern is that a lot of the stuff that we are programmed with, like Matrix and Back to the Future, and I mean the list of this type of film that hinges around parallel universes and different dimensions. Red Dwarf is probably the finest example because it's wall to wall that type of idea, and just because of the existence of things like the Matrix and Red Dwarf, I see it as just yet another level of programming to potentially convince us that rather than there being God or a power that is a spiritual one, that actually it's an electrical one, and we are actually in a computer being controlled. And you know, that's my take on it. I mean, what's your views? I know you said, go on. Yeah. Sorry.
I think people, you know, in this day and age, you know, with the technology and you know, people being sucked into this technological matrix, if you like. I mean, it's a creation. I mean, the word matrix comes from the Latin mater, which means mother, and it's related to the womb. And I've got a definition down here. It's like something within or from which something else originates, develops, or takes form. So this relates to our existence, you know. So depending on how you look at the definition, there are various definitions, medical, what have you, different ones regarding the word matrix, but does seem like the definition makes sense, you know, as to our reality. But to what extent it's if it's digital or not, you know, if something.
Yeah, I mean, I would translate it directly though and say it's the matrix in allegory is literally our matrix that we have at our fingertips in forms of the internet, Facebook, media, TV, films, billboards, newspapers. You know, the list is endless, and all of those things that control us in a very literal way are the same as the allegorical control the computer has on the people in the matrix. But my concern, I say it again, is that people will see that as when CERN comes out with some theory of everything, it will get tied back into all of that programming we've had for years and years and years, and Back to the Future, when they're telling us that actually maybe time travel is possible, or that we live in a parallel universe. And I just don't see it. I see it as a hypothetical example of what we really have in the form of computers and in the form of TV and the rest of the list. I don't know. In other words, what you say is correct. Where do you draw the line? Where do you make that comparison? And that's up in the air and anybody's guess. But I think, I don't know, if you're a very spiritual person, I think it would be easy to be led down the belief that we live in a computer if someone like CERN gives us proof to back it up.
Yeah, holographic universe, what have you. Yeah. You know, the Matrix is so profound. I mean, on my channel, I've got like the about section, and it's like I have these words, you know, this quote from Morpheus, and he says, "The Matrix is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself." And I think, you know, that's kind of what it says it all, really.
It's absolutely spot on. You know, there's no telling somebody in that movie what the Matrix is. There's no telling somebody connected that they're in a computer. And in the same way, there is no way you can just tell somebody we live on a flat Earth. They're pre-programmed to fight like mad, just like they have in that little simulation when he first thinks he's going back into the Matrix, when Neo is first put back into a simulation with the woman in red.
Yep.
And he explains to him that the people who are plugged in, or the people who think you're living on a globe, you can't just tell them. They're going to fight you. They're going to ridicule you. I get it all the time on Facebook. People will absolutely ridicule you. They will make light of what you're saying. They will, you know, poke fun, make your point farcical. And when you present them with proof, they will quite literally ignore it or tell you don't bother. You know, they present you with some evidence and then say, don't even bother trying to rebuff it.
Yeah, it has become a bit of like us and them, you know. It's a hard gap to close. I think, you know, some people are just hopelessly gone, lost in the Matrix, if you like. Whereas, you know, what is exciting is people waking up and flat Earth. You know, the people in flat Earth that I've spoken with and talk to, whatever, they seem really, everyone seems really cool, open-minded. I mean, the flat Earth really is a test of how open-minded you are and what is it you really know. So
I mean, it's amazing that you can come into a community that sounds to an outsider like it's so barking mad, lunatic filled, and then when you get down to it, you know, you've got conversations like this when we're quite literally discussing the nature of reality. You know, that's pretty heavy going stuff, and not at all barking mad, water flowing over the edge of a disc sort of nuts that people portray flat earthers as.
Yeah. I mean, we're using like the science of it all. You know, we're actually trying to use science to measure things, to measure curvature, to measure the distance to the sun, using technology as well to help us. Zoom cameras and so on.
And in terms of pulling the wool over our eyes, I mean, while we're on the subject of the nature of reality, a comparison to the Matrix that's drawn by another non-flat earther, Thomas Sheridan. I know we've discussed him in the past. Actually, it reminds me, I dropped him a little line about flat Earth because I sort of tuned out to Thomas Sheridan. I may as well give the audience at home a bit of a heads up. So sorry if I waffle a little bit now, Ben. Thomas Sheridan is a YouTuber who talks quite a lot about psychopaths, along with a lot of other subjects. And in a recent video Thomas Sheridan did, he was talking about borders being broken down. And at the beginning of that particular video, he explained that somebody had been shown, or the person talking about pulling down the borders was shown a picture of the globe and was asked, where do you see the borders? And my first comment to him was, well, the Earth is flat, so that's your kind of comparison is a bit of a farce, although I just said, look, it is flat, and highlighted that I understood he didn't agree, and I just wanted to get his take on it. And he got back to me and said, you know, actually, I've got a lot of time for flat earthers, far more time than I have for, you know, religious nutcases. And all I'm interested in is people not massacring each other and killing each other. And that was kind of the reaction I'd expected. In other words, he's not that interested in flat earth, but he's focusing on his own specialist subject, which is my ham-handed segue into getting us into the subject of gaslighting and crazy making and toxic people. I mean, what's, without being too leading, what's your experiences of what Thomas Sheridan calls the psychopathic control grid, or his analogy being the Matrix? That's what he calls it, the psychopathic control grid.
Yeah, well, you know, Thomas Sheridan, I mean, I followed his work for a couple of years, and, you know, really enjoyed some of the stuff that he did on psychopathy and sociopathy. Very insightful, and has helped me, you know, being able to notice this kind of individual in, you know, in society, in my life, or what have you. And I found it very useful. But when the flat Earth came along, you know, he put out a video saying it was a CIA psyop, and you know, I made a comment on his video, and it got lots of comments and whatever he likes and that, because he was so anti it. And you know, he to me, he displayed at that time some signs of sociopathy, if you like, in how he responded to people in the comments section. So at that point, I lost all interest in Thomas Sheridan.
I mean, do you not feel that that might just be the same reaction as anybody else to this? In other words, the programming for Thomas Sheridan, me, you, and anybody else who is presented with this, they're kind of pre-programmed to fight it. And when Thomas Sheridan, by nature of the show he does and the topics he talks about, kind of comes under attack left and right anyway, and flat earth is just yet another attack that he doesn't want to discredit or get on board with, and instead of sort of just ignoring it, he's fell back on the programming. You know, he's done what he's been programmed by TV to do and ridiculed it.
Yeah, he fails to see the sheer, you know, the massive importance and relevance to the whole system and the whole control matrix, if you like. He's another one, like Max Egan. You know, Max Egan has been like, it's a bit, you know, he hasn't, he's tried to avoid the issue a little bit, made a couple of videos, a bit like Thomas Sheridan. Now, Max Egan, we have him in the Rebel Outpost Flat Earth Hospital. He's a patient there. I think Thomas Sheridan is a good candidate.
I watched all three of them today, and I didn't catch that bit, although he's not a familiar name to me, to be honest.
Max Egan, yeah, he's an Australian activist, and I've, you know, talked about the control system and so on for several years, 7 years. I think he's had a radio show, and he doesn't see how this is the flat Earth, the ball Earth lie is the most fundamental thing to our whole existence, and why we're being lied to, and how they're doing the lies, and breaking the programming. You know, once you come to realize that we've been lied to, the ball's not spinning, and what have you. And it's a shame for me. These people, although they've done good work, you know, they've become a little bit irrelevant, and I see them more as like closed-minded. And how can they not see the importance and relevance of this subject matter?
I mean, again, I don't want to put words into Thomas Sheridan's mouth, but I mean, my view on it would be that he sees psychopaths as the perpetrators of the lie, therefore possibly more important. Although in saying that, there's a contradiction, because it is the most fundamental lie they tell. So to sort of deny that lie is a bit crazy in itself.
Yeah, well, his reasoning is, you know, he can see clouds going down to the horizon, and that was his proof that the Earth is a ball. But he's supposed to be an artist, and one of the things you learn as an artist is about perspective. And he completely ignored that. And I think a lot of people out there, like bigger names on YouTube, truth community, if you like, they're perhaps been a bit wary and afraid to touch this subject. Perhaps because it contradicts some of their things, or perhaps they think it will put people off.
I think it's probably the latter. I think flat Earth turns a lot of people off and incites a lot of anger in people. So maybe he has looked into it and seen the amount of shills and trolls and horrible crazy making that goes on the YouTube videos. I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it. People who comment have seen it. Even the commenters themselves get attacked when they comment on our videos. I mean, it's nuts. So wanting to distance himself or anybody else who does that is kind of understandable. At this point, I'm probably defending him, so I'll probably stop.
I think it's a cop out on in terms of like these big truthers and that. It's a shame. I think it's a real shame. I think there's no subject more important than the flat Earth right now. This is bigger than every other conspiracy, the biggest secret ever, and needs to be, people should be talking about it. It's really important to our spiritual development as humanity, individually and collectively. Change everything. It can change everything. Whether it will or not, that's another question.
Yeah, I mean, with the individual, I mean, I try not to focus on people's individual beliefs when they're presenting sort of information that they've researched and confirmed. So with Thomas Sheridan, I mean, I'm sure I said this on the last conversation we had, I tuned out to him. I can't remember what he did. He did something that just didn't jive with me, and I thought, okay, I've got 99% of the information I feel out of Thomas Sheridan at this point. I think it was tarot cards or something, and I just kind of switched off and didn't realise he'd sort of I still don't know the situation with what he actually said about flat Earth to knock it. I've got a vague idea from second-hand information. But what I do take from Thomas Sheridan is the information itself. I mean, he has, along with a lot of other psychopaths who have YouTube channels, given me information about crazy making and toxic people and the one you said earlier about gaslighting. A lot of these terms are going to be things that people have no concept of. I mean, do you want to give us a sort of brief explanation of gaslighting and how that ties into the media exposure of the globe, or you take it from here, you explain away?
Gaslighting. Now, when you put up one of your recent videos was dealing with a commercial, British Telecom commercial starring Willem Dafoe, and in that they're sort of making a mockery of space and filming in space and the ISS in a way, and that they're in a studio and somebody steps on the set and they say cut, and this is things like this seem to be countermeasures. I mean, there's been two big commercials, BT one and the John Lewis one about the man on the moon, and they put these things in your face. I mean, I think gaslighting, I've got a definition up here. Okay, it says gaslighting or gaslighting is a form of mental abuse in which information is twisted or spun, selectively omitted to favour the abuser, or false information is presented with the intent of making victims doubt their own memory, perception and sanity. And I think that's what's really, gaslight perfectly defines and describes what's going on and how they use the media and like these adverts, like the advert you made a video about. So yeah, they're throwing all that. It seems to be countermeasures, and they put the truth in plain sight, if you like. And when people come to discover the truth, some will say, "Oh, that's just science fiction. I saw that in an advert. You're just being silly," or it's very clever what they're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy making. And I think that there's actually a movie called Gaslight, which obviously is based around the idea of gaslighting. And in that movie, the psychopath character will literally adjust the lighting in the house. So this woman over time creates the impression that there's someone in the house, and over time she goes more and more nuts just from what this psychopath character is doing to them. And for me, adverts like, especially the BT advert, is a psychopathic way at laughing at a lot of the people in the flat earth community. It's hiding that truth in plain sight with the light and the arm coming in. And you highlighted it, although I didn't on that video, about the comparisons to the ISS, just its position relative to the Earth, and what they're seeing is all very ISS. So to sort of cut to the fourth wall, it's just an insult to people like you and I.
Yeah, well, they're definitely mocking the masses, the unaware, the unawakened. They do it all the time. They love to do that, and reinforce their lie at the same time. It's just very clever. It's reverse psychology. It's psychological warfare, and it's how they do it. Once you step out of it, you can see it clearly. See how the media machine works, and it's always fascinating to see how they're trying to control and manipulate people in their homes.
So hiding the truth in plain sight came up on a Facebook chat when I was talking about the azimuthal equidistant map, and I posted it, and somebody had asked for an explanation, and I obviously said, look, there's a 200-foot ice wall all the way around us, and a commenter said, just like in Game of Thrones. Now, I've not seen Game of Thrones, but as soon as that person said that, I thought, right, so somewhere there's a psychopath that's decided to hide that particular piece of truth in plain sight. And that's what we end up with. I don't know, have you seen Game of Thrones?
I watched the first 6 episodes, but I didn't get into it. It wasn't my cup of tea. But,
did you see the ice wall in it?
I've seen a picture of it. Yeah, I've seen it, or a clip from where they talk about it. And it's just there again. They're putting it in the subconscious minds of people. It's very strange. You wonder, are they trying to tell us something? On one hand, are they trying to get the flat Earth out there? It's a small part of the subconscious or the mind might think that, but on the other hand, it seems to be this fictionalizing flat Earth, fake space, and so on. So it's clever.
One of the commenters in the feed had said, "Have we got any photos of the ice wall?" And that's why I was sort of asking about the ice wall that's been hidden in plain sight in Hollywood, in the same way that 1,000,001 films have got the globe hidden into in the context of the movie itself, let alone images of it. The same thing applies to computers. I mean, I put out a video that was showing a graphics card manufacturer who had used the NVIDIA presentation showing that the moon landings were real by rendering the image 3-dimensionally and then showing where all the light sources were. And you think, well, this is a graphics card manufacturer, someone designed to fake things. And on that video, a commenter said, yeah, you're not wrong, but also the amount of games that have got non-stop space themes, traveling to moons, traveling to planets, it's endless reinforcement of that idea.
Yeah, and then there's the things like it, including the flat Earth. There's a flat Earth plate or clock, rather, in Back to the Future.
Yes.
Things. It just makes you wonder what on earth is going on. And then there's movies like The Signal. I don't know if you've seen that, and The Giver. These both star the same actor, young actor, and they're both related to flat Earth, escaping the dome and crossing the boundaries, and very profound, very good movies. Both are good movies. Recommend them. But yeah, it's there. It's just there in plain sight, and it just goes. People can't see it. It seems to be this whole truth seeking, especially flat Earth, is definitely something for people with eyes to see and ears to hear. There seems to be this kind of spiritual dynamic going on as well.
I mean, talking of eyes to hear, and I've got a picture. I will share it. So let's see if I can do this. Of the Antarctic ice wall, or ice shelf as they call it. Let's share this to everybody. So yeah, one of the commenters said, have we got a picture? And you've only got to type in Antarctica and you can get various different pictures of what could be considered the ice wall. The reality is, I've never been, you've never been, I've not got any pictures of it. So whether or not we will ever actually see the ice wall is anybody's guess. I mean, I'd love to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's you know it's one of those, might be one of those mysteries that we never solve. But you know, I think people are innovative and creative and find ways of getting information on Antarctica.
I mean, what is your on what might be out there? This is going to totally go into the realm of speculation here, but you mentioned all three of the main ones: dome, infinite plane, puddle theory. You know, what's your best guess? What's your idea of the truth in that regard?
Well, you know, I like speculation. I think, firstly, I think it's important to establish the proofs and to understand them and to perform experiments and to find out about that. But I think speculation is a really important part of the next stage. I mean, you can stay stuck on the proofs and, you know, not go anywhere, but there's so much more creativity and thought processes and imagination and mysteries to be solved, which really comes through speculation and imagination and, you know, proper thinking about these things. So I'm a big fan of speculation. I think for the what's out there, I don't know. You know, the horizon seems to rise to eye level when you go up in the high altitude balloons and so on. So this, you know, is credence to an infinite plane, whether there's a dome or not, or whether there's some kind of field, force field, of some kind, barrier. I don't know. I'm open to both possibilities right now. Maybe there's more.
Sorry, I was going to say the only indicators I can see is things like the Northern Lights. You know, a very obvious. You know, I don't want to say structure, but an artifact that we can actually clap eyes on. I mean, that's and again something I'd really love to go and see. I mean, what's your take on the Northern Lights?
The Aurora Borealis, I don't know. I mean, it seems, you know, to be some atmospheric, electromagnetic interference of some kind. I don't know what it is. You know, I think for me, the sky has become a whole new mystery again. What is the sun, the moon, so-called planets, wandering stars, the stars themselves? Anything in the sky is really up for, takes on a new possibility.
Yeah, there's a load of great theories out there. The electromagnetic one as well. When you see people showing you water bend around, you know, the statically charged balloons and stuff, you kind of go, yeah, this is stuff that we can clap eyes on. This is stuff we can visualize. You know, when it comes to tides, if these forces above us are dragging tides around, you know, them having electrical forces over things that we can visualize and replicate is a sort of great way of moving forward with those sorts of theories. I mean, have you done much? Have you looked into the electromagnetic theories that are out there much?
A little bit. The electromagnetic universe. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and there's definitely this magnetic forces around us and in our existence. These things appear to be real. Yeah, I haven't studied it that much. The electromagnetic model. But it's, you know, it seems to be a possibility. You know, I think whatever it is, we're in some kind of electromagnetic field, and how that applies to the universe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a heavy-going theoretical subject that we've been so deceived about that, again, we've got to work our way picking through the lies and truth of what we do have in terms of information. Because obviously people looking through telescopes aren't going to be completely full of it. There's going to be certain observations that we're presented with, even by NASA, that are going to have truth in them. And we've got to pick that apart before we can start remodeling everything else, because it's fast to think that these scientists aren't doing anything. You know, they are researching, and there is going to be truth out there in their materials, but it's so wickedly twisted up with lies that it just takes such a long time. I mean, on a lighter subject, as we've gone through some of the theoretical stuff, I know that the Flat Earth Rebel Outpost channel is starting to get a bit of momentum now, and I love the channel. You know, I started off the show with a little bit that we talked about before, the sort of tranquil scenes from Mars. Tell us a bit about Flat Earth Rebel Outpost and how that came to be.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, well, I was doing a Ball Earth Skeptic show with John LeBon and David Weiss of Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, and we did 12 episodes of that, and we had Mark Knight, also known as Wakey, on there, and I found out that he lived quite nearby me. So we decided to meet up, and we spent like 7-8 hours down by the beach chatting away, having a laugh, talking flat earth conspiracies, truth, and all this stuff. And we come up with the idea, because the subject, the flat earth and the globe model, it lends itself to comedy. It's just funny. When you're on our side of it, it's really funny. So we were discussing various things that we could do, how to. We wanted the show to be fun, creative, beautiful, and profound. So we try and incorporate all these things in the show. And so we come up with different characters and stuff, and we was back and forth, just cracking each other up all day. And then we got to filming it. We spent the first episode, the first couple of days. It was like we were being, like there was a force above us helping us make this thing, and everything seemed to click. We come up with an idea, and it will work. We find this, and it would work, or at least we think so. And so we wanted to do it because there's so much paranoia in the truth movement, in the conspiracy world. We wanted it to be, and fear, and the world that we're living in is kind of like, not that nice on some level, and people can get caught up in that. And we felt like, we dabbled a bit in trying to do a bit of comedy, flat earth comedy before, and there's other people online doing some stuff, and Mark and I, we've both done lots and lots of research into the flat earth and to the globe earth model, and we've made various videos about it, serious videos as well. And we felt, okay, well, let's just not let us feel like we wanted to be outside the box. We wanted to be not politically correct. We wanted to free ourselves of any limitations in the content we produce, and as an antidote to the oppressive mind control and stuff. So it's been a fun thing that we've been working on for the last couple of months, pretty much most of the time, our spare time, doing that, because it's such a fun thing to do. And just talking about globe heads and what have you, it just cracks us up. It's funny.
But there's some serious stuff in there. I mean, cooking flat earth noodles and kung fu aside, you've got some serious stuff being addressed. You're phoning up important people and asking important questions and getting farcical answers and getting nowhere. It's really poignant when you watch it. It sort of makes you step back away from the screen a little bit and go, God, do they really not have any departments to put these guys through to? Surely not. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's a great concept, really. It's called that part of the show is called Globe Hacker, and Mark does that, and he's really, really good at it. I mean, the people he's phoned up so far, the Archbishop of Canterbury, European Space Agency, and the questions they give are very telling. It's also fun to poke fun at the same time, and there's so many targets.
You've really got to know your stuff to be able to do that. To be able to think on your feet when you're trying to keep comedic timing. Which I realise that the whole show is tongue in cheek, but at the same time, in order to achieve that, you've really got to know what you're talking about. You can't just phone up and say, "Look, the Earth's flat," because you won't get any comedy out of it for a start. But more importantly, the person on the other end of the phone isn't going to be an idiot with any of these, especially the space agencies. It must be terrifying for Mark to do those sorts of calls.
Yeah, he's really good at it. I mean, what the people say in response is it's really telling. In different ways. These people are believe in the ball earth model, and they never even considered some of these things before. So there's lots of different levels of hacker. From comedic, it's funny to hear, and it's also really interesting to see.
You mentioned you've got a new show about to come out. Did you say? Is it the fourth one?
Yeah, the fourth one should be. We did some filming for it this week, so yeah, that should be out within the next 2 weeks. We generally about 3 weeks in between episodes, see what we can do. The last episode, episode 3, was a longer episode, 40 minutes. So we spent a lot of time doing that. So we had a little break, and then we're back into it again. So
yeah, good for me. I got to steal some of the footage.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like the Mars scene. I mean, that was fun to do.
So what? Sorry.
The Mars scene that you played at the beginning. We've got lots of footage there, and dressing up as astronauts and trying to fake space. That was fun. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you about, actually. When you did obviously what you're portraying is that the ISS is done with green screen, and I know you did the do-si-dos to sort of illustrate. Is that your firm belief that the ISS is filmed with green screen? I know there's a lot more to it than that, but
yeah, I think it's an aspect to it. I mean, it seems I don't believe the ISS is a real thing up there with people in it. I'm not sure what it is. I see light going overhead. I've seen it before here, but I think I'm not sure what it is. I think there's too much evidence that shows that it's fake. How they're faking it, whether it's CGI, green screen, harnesses, zero-G planes, or some other kind of technology. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much. I mean, I think some of the footage appears to be green screen, and so we thought we'd add a little bit of that to the show as well.
Did you see the little piece Tiger Dan did on? I know it's not his piece, but he compiled quite a lot of anti-gravity style evidence that showed. I don't know the technology, but it was sort of levitation style technology. Did you see any of that? I
haven't, but I think that's a really interesting part of research that needs to be done. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they have such technologies. They've been working with technologies for a long time. I mean, maybe as far as Tesla, who knows? His discoveries about energy and so on. It seems to be a great mind that they censored from history, it seems. So yeah, I think that's very possible that they have some kind of anti-gravity kind of technology, for sure.
Well, there was another little telling piece that Science at NASA did. I think they released it today, and it tied in for me the idea that perhaps there is no green screen, and perhaps they are purely on something that replicates anti-gravity because of the effects that they were feeling. Now, I know a lot of people will disagree with me and say, look, they're all in on it, they all know, but I still think it's a very real possibility that it's like space cadets, and the astronauts, or whatever you want to call them, don't actually have the faintest idea that they're duping the world, and that they're being put onto something, like Tiger Dan says, that replicates being in anti-gravity, space cadet style. And the telling piece was that when the astronauts come out of the ISS, they all complain of having eye trouble, trouble with their optic nerve, their vision gets worse, and they have to go under sort of doctor's observations while their vision corrects. You think, if you're being constantly levitated through, that sort of machine that I have no concept of, proof or anything else, when you've got that kind of going on, it might lend itself to causing nerve damage to your eyes. I don't know. It's just another interesting piece that Science at NASA did.
I'm not sure what the deal is with the astronauts. They seem to be very convincing, like they believe what they were saying. The most recent ones in history, like from the ISS, the people I've seen, like Sunita Williams and Scott Kelly, they do appear to be sincere on some level. So it's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, whether these people are mind controlled, I think the whole military industry, getting into the military, there's a lot of mind control that goes on there, obedience and unquestioning kind of thought processes. Whether it's mind control or whether they're being taken to another place and being led to believe that they're in space, or maybe they are just really good at lying. I don't know.
I've said this before. I mean, if at some stage somebody goes up there with a regular camera and they put a rocket up there with a camera on the front of it and see us breaching the zero-G barrier and breaking through the Coriolis effect, carried winds all the way up to the top, it's still a possibility that they could go, look, you bunch of idiots, here you go, here's genuine proof, Joe Boggs Public's gone up with a Kodak camera. But it just seems very, very unlikely when all of the indicated proof seems to suggest otherwise, with eye level horizons and flat water, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, if it was what they say it is, with the capabilities of viewing Earth and whatever, we would have amazing pictures from space of Earth, really, it's truly stunning, outrageously beautiful pictures of Earth from space, but we don't get that. We get dodgy, blurry CGI images from the ISS live feed, and then they put out some fancy CGI video of Earth at night with all the lights on it, and there's a couple of lightning bolts going off, and it seems so ridiculous once you start to wonder about, there's supposedly so much lightning going on, there's no planes flying in the sky, the lights don't flicker properly, and one shot they show that all lit up, and then on the ISS feed it always cuts off and goes into darkness, and you don't see any lights at all. Maybe this blue screen that comes up, and it really seems to be some kind of computerized imaging.
Yeah, it's all edited. I mean, it seems to me that every single piece that plays out is pre-recorded and poor quality. And like you say, when it comes to that piece that they released with all the beautiful lights, I mean, it was a spectacular piece of footage. It looked glorious, from a sci-fi, I hate to use that term, but from a sci-fi point of view, it looks spectacular. It was so glorious. But then you get someone like Insanity is Sanity upload it and rip it to shreds and just say, look, this is total nonsense. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Oh, how bad is that? And you go, well, yeah. You kind of look at it with eyes wide open and go, yeah, it's as bad as watching, a movie like Gravity. It looks really glorious, but you're suspending disbelief, and the suspension of disbelief is no different when you watch one of those time lapses. It's
for sure. I mean, the movie Gravity, I mean, that's another one of these programming, in your face programming, subconscious movies. I thought it was a fantastic movie, but the stuff that they put out and then NASA puts out is not half the quality of what they did in that movie.
Yeah, that's kind of confusing to me, and maybe it's because of the rate that they're having to put it out that the quality is so low, or maybe it's the staff waking up. You're going to have people like Bart Sobral receiving videos from disgruntled staff who figured it out, and the same may apply to people making their subliminal embed on whatever type of graphic they're working on that day. If they ever figured out what they were actually doing, they might think, oh no, I'll make this less subtle than it needs to be. So it's goes from being a nice subliminal embed to a glaringly obvious message to anybody who's looking for it.
Yeah. What you mentioned Bart Sobral. What are your thoughts on him? I'm not sure, because he tends to, he's got that movie documentary he made. What's the name of it?
Well, he's done a couple. He did A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, and then he did a sequel called Astronauts Gone Mad. Right,
that's right. Okay, the first one, A Funny Thing, where Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, where he's got the astronauts are supposedly in the spacecraft looking out of their window and they're blocking out. You see, I'm not sure if that's is legit footage, personally. I don't think the astronauts went up there. I think there would be better ways of faking the photography. To me, the whole thing seems a bit weird. I'm not 100% about that.
I don't know. To my eyes, it just looked like they were up very high in a plane. I've seen similar footage. Again, you have to kind of question when you go back to your memory. Did I see this in a movie, or was this in a documentary? I seem to remember seeing footage of very, very high up planes looking down and sighting targets, and they were, or to my eyes, the same or similar height to how they looked when you had the context of what they were looking at through that window. So although this seems like a bizarre thing to say, when you look at that very first shot of the Earth, I use it on the thumbnail for my second video log. When you actually look at that picture, you can get an idea, and it's a window, you can get a kind of visual perspective on how high they are, and it's not really that high. It is, but it's not anywhere near what they say it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I think they did actually go very, very high up to take that shot and to fake a lot of stuff. Whether or not I think that footage has been sort of double faked, sort of double bluff, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's what I'm starting to think about it. I mean, it's an interesting video, and I wonder about why it was released, and what it kind of lends itself to them being in space a little bit, and that whole that they actually went up there and so on, which I don't think is the case. So I'm a bit suspicious of that. And Bart Sibrel, he's not gone flat Earth. I liked his video where he addressed the astronauts and asked them to swear on the Bible to prove that to say that they've definitely been to the moon, and they wouldn't do that. I thought that was a really good one. So yeah, I'm a bit unsure about Bart Sibrel.
Actually did it. I think there was two that actually would do it, but the main guys. I think Neil Armstrong was offered $5,000 for charity of his choice if he said, yes, I swear I went to the moon, and he just refused. I think you're the first man on the moon, mate. This conspiracy rests on what you say, and he probably knew it.
Yeah, it's a big part of the it's a big puzzle piece, isn't it? That their unwillingness to how it's so easy just to say, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. But they didn't. They got angry. They got defensive. It's as if some kind of programming was kicking in. Some kind of mind control thing. I think.
I think Mark Sargent summed it up quite nicely, because Mark Sargent said, if you were part of the team, I mean, this is going against my argument that they're all or at least in the current state, going into some machine that creates the effect of them going up there. But in terms of Neil Armstrong, if they're all in on it, if the first astronauts to the moon knew full well that they weren't going, and all of the stuff they filmed in the studio, they were well aware that was going to be the footage they used, there's going to be a point where he's going to presumably have been told the reason why they can't go, i.e. there's something stopping them, the links to Antarctica. And I think Mark Sargent ties it to basically saying that they found God, or there was at least a reasonable assumption that there was a creator at work. And when you know that information, your chances of defying something that exists are far, far, far higher. Because ultimately, if they're lying their ass off the entire time, what's the harm in telling just one more lie? Who cares? Just put your hand on the Bible and say, yeah, of course I went. But they didn't, that's much more telling when it's something to do with God. But that's Mark Sargent's take on it. I don't know, what's your feeling?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, they seem to be, fearful of something, whether it was the creator or their families in danger or what have you. It's there were definite signs of fear, anger. So yeah, it's just another one of those. There's so many things wrong with NASA. There's not one thing right with NASA. And people these days, a lot of people just believe. It's hard to believe that how people can't see it. I mean, but then again, a year ago, I'd have been the same kind of thing. I'd have been like, oh, space is great. It's not really looked at closely. But once you start analysing, like any of these conspiracies, once you start looking at them, investigating them, and seeking the truth, you find again and again so many things wrong, so many things that don't make sense, and so much that you start to see a picture, a pattern, and then it clicks, and you're like, well, no, there's no way that was true. This event was totally staged. This is and so on.
The only trouble is that it's like an onion. When you peel back one layer and say, I've figured out this layer is a load of rubbish, and you chuck that layer away, but what you're left with isn't necessarily a big ball of truth. It may just be another layer. I mean, I'll give you another example, just because I got a load of flack about it when I did a video log about it. Maybe I didn't make the point clear. When you've got someone like Alex Jones exposing in the alternative media, the truth, exposing the sort of Freemasonic rituals, which do go on, by putting that into the media, it then creates a sort of a mystical image, a deliberate mystical image with these people, so that the next layer of programming along, so forget the globe line, Star Wars, and take the the sort of dark forces of of the Force, with lightning coming out their fingers, dressed in robes. You sort of have those images come to mind when the alternative media presents the Freemasonic rituals, which do really go on. And those rituals are only really given power by people knowing that they happen. I mean, the example I gave was with the rings that they wear. So you get endless kids programming in cartoons talking about rings of power. You get the Green Lantern, you get endless Lord of the Rings. And the spiritual commenters would say, well, no, these rings that the Freemasons wear, they have because of their involvement in the rituals that they take part in. It's like, well, I don't deny that they take part in the rituals, but that's kind of a facade to create the mystical image that they are, actually going to create lightning from their bloody fingers, which they're never going to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The whole there's definitely something going on in terms of like magic or occult controlling the mind. I mean, magic is I think Aleister Crowley, who was a infamous black magician who I hadn't heard of until like 5 years ago. It's all about the will and controlling the will, and people's will is being manipulated here, and that's really what the magic is, it seems.
Exactly. That is the magic, the manipulation itself. It's not that the ring some guy wears has got some magical power inside it. It's just the men themselves and the things they say and do that manipulate us, and therein lies the magic.
Yeah, I think it's one form of the magic. I mean, I think there's I think you can manipulate energies and forces with intent and make things, certain objects, more. Personally, I think you can do that stuff. I think there is an element of magic that exists beyond just the controlling of people's will. To what extent, I don't know. I think there's a lot of people who are part of these secret societies and Ordo Templi Orientis and occult societies. These people do these rituals for a reason. And I think it's something else is going on, something spiritual. Yeah.
I know you use the word forces being manipulated, and I don't want to seem closed-minded, but that's probably where I disagree. In the same way as people go to church and will pray to their God that something happens, and they will have a spiritual experience at church. I've experienced it myself on many occasions. Again, lightning never comes from the pastor's fingers, and in the same way, while they do these rituals, and in some ways I think what Alex showed us, that is really how it happens. I don't deny it, but the reason we've been shown it is kind of what you have to question. And to me, I don't do I say this live? I don't really prescribe to the idea of there being mystical forces. I just think it's the manipulation of men manipulating men. That's I don't want to seem closed-minded, even though that statement is very closed-minded.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I do believe in I feel like there's a connection to the creator, and there are these good, positive and negative forces out there. Well, sometimes they, you're being helped, and then other times you might be attacked in some way, whether it's technological, something interfering with the internet, or something more serious.
Yeah, I mean, from that point of view, I'd probably say I agree with you. One commenter asked me if I believed, after saying I just didn't believe in the magic spells that they apparently create. She said, well, don't you believe in God or the devil? In other words, kind of asking if I was spiritual. I said, well, I do, but people do good things because if God is working through them, and in the same way, men do evil things because they maybe that's where the force comes in, and that's where I probably would agree with you. But it's still being done through men, in my view.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I see our reality is far more dynamic than than just simple reality of that. I think there's stuff that we don't know, like our dreams, what is really going on there, our consciousness, our soul. This whole reality is just very, very strange, amazing, beautiful, dark. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm definitely open to the idea of there being some kind of magical practices being employed, whether it's sex magic or tradition, more traditional kind of black magic or white magic. I think so much is to do with intent and the will. Getting back to the will again, of how what people do, how they behave. And the dark side is very seductive as well. And I think that some people can get sucked into that. And I think it's pushed a lot in our society, subconsciously through TV shows and movies and what have you.
Consumerism in general and greed in general, all these things are programmed into us through advertising. That's all it is.
Yeah. Symbols, symbology, subliminals, like you were saying. All of these things kind of affect us on a deeper level that we're perhaps not aware of. Most of the time, our conscious mind can't focus on all of these different details and things that we see or hear. So I think there's ways of manipulating people that are beyond just like TV propaganda.
Fair enough. I just think it's a bombardment of the senses. There is so many levels of this stuff. There is so much subliminal programming. There is so much manipulation that it's hard to keep a grip on what is real when you're being subjected to stuff subconsciously all day, every day, no matter which way you look, no matter what you look at or type into the internet. You're constantly being manipulated, and it's an assault on the senses.
Yeah, the TV, my TV broke like 5 years ago, and I think I mentioned it before, but to you. But yeah, that started my awakening process. Once my TV broke, it got me online and looking at other things, and I saw a comment about chemtrails, and I'd wonder, how come I never thought of that? How come I never thought about weather modification, which is like 5 years ago? And I had the same feeling about flat Earth. How come I've never questioned the shape of the Earth?
Now you see why. You see everyone else still subjected to it on a daily basis, and there's no waking them up half the time, or 99% of the time.
Yeah, I don't know how. I have no idea. I could not watch an hour or 2 hours of television with adverts in between and the programming, the news. It's one big mind control.
I can't stand it. It is the definition of an assault on your senses. Watching the news, whenever it comes on, I can only get about 2 minutes through it before I have to literally change channel. I can't bear to watch it.
Yeah, it gives me I avoid it as much as I can. The TV. I do watch TV shows online, download them or whatever, things I like. But the TV, I think, is just a different frequency. It is called programming for a reason. It's one of the things that people are sucked in one way or another through the TV, whether it's sports or sitcoms, and then they get a dose of the news in between. You can't help but people have it on in the background, just listening away to it. It's getting into the subconscious. It's programming on different levels. You're hearing different things. You pick up on different things. But for the average person, it just goes straight in and they don't question it whatsoever. So,
no, that's it. It's there for one reason. It's there to indoctrinate us into this globe lie. I've seen several videos. I think it's Reality and Truth's channel. I can't be certain of that. I'll put a link after this goes out. But he's been highlighting sort of where much more subtle programming comes into play on TV shows. You get things like Friends. I was watching it earlier, where they were, just subtly dropping in stuff about the globe here and there. And this has obviously made its way into the script for a reason. But even when you're watching something that's totally devoid of anything space, it's still going to have that little element. Big Bang was the one that Reality and Truth. I'm sure was it Reality and Truth. I forget. But yeah, one of the other flat Earth channels that's out there. I'm sure I've got that wrong. Reality and Truth is a subliminal channel, so it's definitely not him. But yeah, there was a piece on Big Bang, sort of talking about the globe and religious views, and it's there, like you say, to just go in on almost a background level. You just hear it in a comedy, and you don't you don't subscribe to their view immediately, but you've heard that view, you've had that opinion put forward, and it all sinks in whether we like it or not, whether you agree or not. You might fundamentally disagree, and it'll still sink in. And that's the bit that people don't really understand, that we are so easy to manipulate.
Yeah, I mean, even discussing like a lot of these things can have a negative, you know, like researching like media hoaxes and stuff like that online. There's a lot of things in that it still has a negative effect on people. I've had to stop looking at media hoaxes now because I don't want that interfering in my headspace. You know.
Yeah, racism's the same. They do it on Facebook all the time. You know, if they want to push some racist agenda, they'll stir the masses up by almost like using anti-racist stuff. But just by putting the anti-racist stuff out there on Facebook and getting everybody liking it, that idea is then subliminally planted in people's head, and you know, over time drip feeding that racist idea. If we never had the word racist used on Facebook, the thing would just, no, that's so fast to say, it would just disappear, but it would be far less prevalent in people's minds if it wasn't constantly mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. The control, the level of it is just almost omnipotent, you know, omnipotent. They do have this kind of like seem to have this godlike control over people. I would equate this whole matrix system of deception is a bit like that. I mean, and it makes you wonder about the Bible, the devil. I'm definitely open to that perspective, and I think the flat Earth is made. It makes us look back at these texts, and these, I think the Bible is a fantastic and interesting book, but I'm not a Christian. But I think there's so much in there that the flat Earth kind of points to. Yeah,
I did an interview with my uncle, and I was expecting him to kind of be on my side, and I foolishly assumed that being a Christian he would be a flat earther. Why I drew that conclusion before interviewing him, I don't know, but I always knew that there was a massive void between what science said and what the Bible had taught me growing up, and knowing that and sort of leaving my faith behind based on the fact that the two didn't jive made me think, well, my uncle's a pastor, he must subscribe to the flat earth because that's what it says, it's there in black and white, surely he's a believer. And not at all. He'd sort of melded his beliefs into the scientific model and used passages to explain away why it's a globe and almost defend the scientific model. And he had been interviewed, I can't remember who it was by, who's the most sort of science guy out there that's out debunking Christians, what's his name?
Richard Dawkins.
That's the guy. He interviewed my uncle, and my uncle's point to him was, well, the Big Bang Theory is all well and good, but we've got to go back further. And it's like, well, yeah, that's nice, but that's completely irrelevant to what your book says. The book's got a creation story, and it's there, and it's not allegorical. It's it's literal. We don't need to go back further and look at scientific nonsense and find yet another layer of deception to slap on top of gravity or whatever it is they do next. It's just not needed, especially if you're a Christian. But it would seem that they're as big a globe heads as most of people. It's mad.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, really, isn't it? I mean, because the mainstream science really contradicts what the Bible says, yet people can somehow bridge the gap, which is very peculiar. I mean, the Bible literally states again and again that it's immovable, and there's a firmament and so on. I mean, someone like your pastor uncle or something.
Yeah.
Kent Hovind. I don't know if you know who Kent Hovind is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's done a lot of work. He's a Christian. Done a lot of work on creationism, and many debates with evolutionary biologists and so on. And he, for a long time was saying, the textbooks are filled with rubbish. And now he's been bombarded with a lot of people saying, what about the flat Earth? And he's saying, well, the textbooks are right. So it's a bit strange, like this sort of dynamic for Christians to not see what the Bible actually says.
I think Tiger Dan was didn't he go to jail for some reason or another?
I don't know.
Is that the same guy?
Kent Hovind. Yeah, Kent Hovind went to jail, I think, for about 7 or 8 years on some trumped-up charge, apparently. Something to do, I think it was partly to do with him not paying taxes. But yeah, I mean, they kept him away because, I discovered his work about 5 years ago on my search for truth. I found his work brilliant, and he out-debated every evolutionary advocate there is. So I would really recommend those debates of his. From just whether you're a Christian or not, it's good, and hopefully, I mean, the Bible does say that it's stationary and pretty much alludes to it being flat, and you think that there's a lot of Christians over the world, and this might be an area for, I'm sure Flat Earth will expand into that, community more, and make a difference that way.
It's crazy when you see flat earthers saying no religion is just not allowed, and you think, in the same way, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I can't discount the idea that we might live in a computer. While I can't discount that idea, you have to sort of look for a preponderance of evidence and look for proof. And when you're a Christian and your proof says one thing, but you just, I don't want to use the word ignore, but sort of mold it into a different truth, that's kind of how have we been so manipulated? How has it got to this, that you can be a sort of dyed in the wood creationist Christian and still say, yeah, the ball, yeah, I like that, yeah, that works for me. How have we got to this stage? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? The brainwashing. I mean, the idea of religion, like you said, I mean, that's become like such a dirty word. I think you mentioned Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is probably the person that I dislike the most in the scientific community. And it's just something about him that's just really off.
Evil.
Yeah. I mean, it's just cold. He's just very cold. Not like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's kind of likable. Brian Cox, okay. These kind of people. But Richard Dawkins, he's so against religion, but he doesn't realise that, or maybe he does, that the scientific community, mainstream science, is a belief system. It is nothing but a belief system. And people who follow that are following these priests in white coats, scientists, who are telling them what to believe and so on, and with no evidence to support their spinning ball heliocentric model at all. So really, he's so anti-religion, but he's become the high priest of atheism, which is really based on the whole scientific, the whole mainstream science point of view. So I find that very interesting.
But some of the settings that he does his interviews in look satanic. They're really dark, evil settings. If you watch any of his clips of when he takes apart religious believers from any faith, he has them in this sort of darkened room with all gold and red everywhere. I don't know if you've seen them, and they will just take some Muslim or whatever religion he's got in that day and just rip them a new one on the basis of science. And he's doing it in front of a crowd of sort of sneering, mocking people. It's so evil.
Yeah, I really can't stand the guy. I can't stand him at all. It's sad. It's sad. I mean, he's one of these people who's totally pushed by the mainstream media. He's in the news all the time, on TV, on different, good morning TV shows or whatever. These people are pushed, and they want this atheistic, selfish mentality. That it seems like the whole hiding the flat Earth is really about hiding the Creator. Someone like Richard Dawkins, he's so he promotes hatred to me, in my opinion. Hatred against Muslims, Christians, but it's really strange.
That's what they want. I mean, divide and conquer. If we can set countries against each other, if the powers that should not be set countries against each other, that's wonderful. You know, if this can set races against each other, that's wonderful too. You know, it's just fantastic for them. Scary, but that's what it boils down to: divide and conquer.
Yeah, yeah. Was it order out of chaos? Seems to be what they're doing. Yeah, there's lots of that stuff going on. I mean,
you were saying about the high priests of science. I mean, I haven't got this down as a question, but it's worth a bit of a natter on because of sort of recent Facebook chats that I've been having, and you'll bring up things like the Cavendish experiment or gravity, and it gets brushed aside and it's back onto whatever topic they want to talk about, you know, the stars or whatever else they've gone over 15 times. But, you know, when you try and focus in for globe heads on the fact that gravity is a complete nonsense and even show them the experiments that prove it, again, Tiger Dan does a really good job of exposing the Cavendish experiment in that resistors piece, that guy's.
Right, yeah, I think he borrowed that from John Le Bon.
Yes, he did give him credit for it on the video, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the Cavendish, I mean, John, you know, did some great investigative research on the Cavendish experiment. He really brought that to light. You know, the ridiculousness of them being able to measure the mass of the Earth by hanging two, I think it's lead balls in a shed, you know, back in the 1700s or something. And you know, this determined the magical G gravitational constant or something like this, and which so much of today's science is based upon.
That's it. There's a video where, you know, fairly modern, I think it's done in the early 2000s. You know, I can't remember the university again. I'll put a link to this once the video goes out on YouTube. But he was basically explaining that he couldn't get the model of the Cavendish experiment to work because the previous guy had hacked it to bits in frustration because he could not get it to work. You know, just couldn't replicate it. Even when you look at the original Cavendish experiment, the whole thing is a farce. It's going to be affected by Earth's gravity. And as Fake Spaceman in Space pointed out in the last show, you know, you've only got to have a cat walk through that shed or a spider in there or whatever else, and the whole experiment becomes void if it ever works. Not that we've ever replicated it.
Yeah, it's quite absurd, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit like the Coriolis effect. I mean, there's an experiment. You know, the Coriolis effect is a myth in my opinion. It doesn't really exist on any level whatsoever. And the experiment that you need, the precise conditions you need to have that, to find some kind of Coriolis effect when you're draining water from a tub, the conditions have to be so precise and almost impossible to create without having any effects of making the water spin one way or another, having air in the room, any movement, you know, all this can make water spin in various different ways. And they, you know, so on Wikipedia, they say, oh, you can do this, but you have to let the water sit for a day, and then you have to have the right conditions to do it all the time. It's just another one of these bizarre experiments that's put out there. The Coriolis effect, I mean, you know, people are, you ask most people in the Western world, have you heard about water spinning down toilets the different ways and so on? And most of them will say, yeah. And, you know, they even admit it on Wikipedia and other sites, Library of Congress, that it's a myth. Water doesn't spin down plug holes in different directions in different hemispheres. It's all based on the design of the toilet and, you know, certain tricks that can be done to make water spin a certain way when people were given demonstrations at the equator. There's so many things like this that are put out there, you know, that people haven't really looked into. And once you start to question things like gravity, I mean, that is such a big one to deal with. And once you get your head around the absurdity of all these planets spinning around, being held in and pulled together by gravitation, Earth being formed by gravity, you know, the big oceans being held down by, you know, trillions of tons of water being held down by gravity, yet, you know, flies and anything can jump up in the air. You know, it's you know, gravity is just complete nonsense.
It's the speeds. The speeds are just so astonishing. You know, we're traveling around a black hole at 500,000 miles an hour, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. What? It's just absolutely absurd. And then you get a guy like Brian Mullen come along and actually go through the formula in detail, and, you know, he essentially points out that they're ignoring mass. You know, it's a way of ignoring a massive factor, and you kind of go, Jesus, we've bought this just because it's a nice equation that always works out when you compare one force to another. But there's a reason. It's just because it's a really good formula. But it's not based in reality. It's just a formula. It's totally meaningless, you know, until you actually prove it, and it's not been proved, and it can't be. And we have this Cavendish experiment to show us a measurement, and the origins of the Cavendish experiment were to weigh the Earth. That, you know, it gave us G, but that's what the experiment was actually for. It was trying to weigh the mass of the Earth.
Yeah, theoretical physics, mathematics, you know, you can work it out, you can theorize these things. I mean, the definition of theory is debated, but as far as I'm concerned, it's something that's very theoretical. The Big Bang Theory, evolution theory, the theory of gravity, none of these things have been proven. And yet people go along with it, you know. They believe in gravity. They feel like, you know, they feel like they're being pulled down to the ground. It seems to be just a case something more simpler, such as density and buoyancy. You know, once you crack the shell. Yeah.
I was just going to say that the concern for me is that the next level of programming, what they've already convinced us with, but is, you know, we would hope the house of cards is tumbling. The next level is to convince us of theories like dimensional theories and time travel theories, and, you know, that they're looking for the quote unquote God particle. You know, they want a theory to explain absolutely everything. In other words, one that won't get picked apart so easily as gravity and eventually get found out. And when they give us the theory of everything, you know, it'll be a much better lie, and in my humble view, rooted in things that we've been shown over and over again. You know, multiple dimensions and time travel and all those things we've already been exposed to, in my view. And, you know, you've got the parallels running in the science world from CERN and what they're looking at with their dots and lines that they present us when they actually show us an image. You know, there'll be a glorious dance and a ceremony and a ritual, if you want to call it that leads into a bit of information coming out of CERN. Then you'll have 20 minutes of photography of the actual Hadron Collider. You'll get glorious pictures of the massive cameras, and then you'll get half a second of what they've actually produced there, and it's a picture of dots and lines. And then they move on quickly to what that means and give you a convoluted explanation. And then it's back to some nice lights and an outro. And then that's your information from CERN, you know. And when you boil down what they've said, you kind of think, well, doesn't that sound a little bit like Back to the Future or whatever it is that you've kind of already got in your mind as the go-to, in the same way as people have currently got the globe in their mind as a go-to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you summed it up really nicely there. I mean, I think CERN is, you know, it's not what we've been told it is. I mean, I don't think they're trying to collide atoms there and do such things. I think there's something else going on there related to, possibly related to electromagnetism. Some other, you know, there's definitely something else going on there, in my opinion. It's they've got lots of occult symbolism all over the place, and like you perfectly described, that's how they con people into believing these things. You know, they show them this image, that image, and they give them this little bit of data, and it's, you know, these aren't the droids you're looking for. You know, they just brush you, move you along, and keep you moving. So you can't stand still. I mean, this whole system is a bit like that. They want you, you know, surviving, living from moment to moment. You know, constantly on the go, and it's only when you can step out of it, step out of that system, for a bit, you get to find yourself more, you know, and have time to think about things and research them, discover more about the world and yourself. I mean, they've done such a good job in making society to the way they want it right now, you know, where they manipulate people, keep them in fear. I mean, it's a lot to do with fear. You know, fear is, you know, one way they control the mind.
Yeah, death and sex, that's what works.
Yeah.
People respond to death. They always will. Everyone's scared of, it's back to Freud. You know, this is probably a topic for a whole nother video. I mean, that's probably the best point to leave us on. You know, like you say, the research, the self-discovery, the finding out what flat Earth is for yourself, it's got to be the sort of the key message to waking up the masses, and that is that no matter what you or I say in this video, we're just chipping away. You know, we're peeling away one level of an onion. But when somebody actually goes out there, opens their eyes, starts looking at the world without the haze of the media propaganda or the programming, it's at that point that you can actually say, well, what is Earth? And I think the answer we all come to conclusively is flat.
Yeah, it could be the answer to everything, you know, that you were saying earlier about science and that, you know, searching for the answer to everything, and the flat Earth really does clear a lot of that up.
Yeah, it's nice to have an answer, but the trouble is when people do discover this has been diced up to death as well. You're robbing so many answers, you know, stealing explanations that science has got nicely wrapped up. You know, people have got a good bead on things. They think they know how everything works, and when you present them with flat Earth, you know, you can ask a question as simple as why is the sky blue, and get a lot of shaking heads and a lot of theory. In other words, we're taking away answers, and people don't like that. People really are scared of that, and you know, getting people to sort of see past that and say, yeah, you won't have all the answers when you realize the truth, but at least what you will have is real. It's not fake and fraud and fantasy.
Yeah, it's a process. It's freeing the mind, you know, freeing the mind. That's what's really important. And where you go on your journey and what you discover, you know, that's all part of the magic, the mystery, the wonder.
Back to the Matrix.
Yeah,
I think we're probably best leaving it there on that Matrix Decode note.
Well, yeah, man.
I will put a plug in the link below to Flat Earth Rebel Outpost and Matrix Decode. So Ben, it's been absolutely wonderful. You've been a brilliant guest. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, Nathan. Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it. Cool.
See you again. I've been Nathan Oakley. This has been Flat Earth UK Live. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. Thank you to all the commenters, and I will see you in the next video.